Okay, that's better. Right, so just a quick welcome again to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just mentioning we've got 4 members of the Wayland Lodge Trust here, and led ably by their commander, Barney McCone, as the chair of the trust. So Paul, do you want to introduce this agenda item and we'll get into it? Thanks.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up on a matter we discussed earlier in the year, where council was quite supportive of the idea of providing a loan to the Wayland Lodge Trust to allow the development and expansion of the facility in Kurau. The result of that resolution was a request for some further information, which did indicate that officers would assist, but we haven't been able to. So the trust has essentially provided all of this information themselves from their efforts. So I do recognise the work that they have put in to provide this information that's now attached to the report. And as part of that, they have firmed up what they see as the loan that would provide them the best advantage to allow the development to proceed. I think, yeah, as 2 of the trust members are here, we'll give them an opportunity to speak. But council, I think, understands the very positive impacts that this type of development has on the community, not only in terms of housing, but really about giving people choice about where they live and the kind of well-supported and secure environment that they can live in, and that's a very important consideration. So it is not only part of the housing puzzle, but part of the puzzle of how people can live in good, secure housing. I think probably the key issue, and we'll work through various things, is that because the trust will say someone needs to go first in terms of this development and make a commitment before everyone's waiting for someone else to sort of jump or make a commitment. So I think this is an opportunity for council to do that, show that it is supportive of this community initiative and sees the value in it, and that will help with their fundraising and other efforts. So there are some details, but I think perhaps now give the trust an opportunity to talk, and then we can move through some questions and then get into the report proper.
Okay, so Barney or Peter, if you'd like to make any comments, just also acknowledge, acknowledge your other members who are here, Jim Meehan and Simon Taylor as well. So thanks very much for all being here.
Thank you, Gary. Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to get here. It's and I just reiterate what Paul has probably said, most of the words that I'd like to say, but this is very, very important for our community. The older people in our town are relying on us to pull this off, and really we're relying on the council to back us. We've got funds we believe we can get out of the heritage building, but we have to come up with 1/3 of the overall cost of the project, which is 1.5. So if we can get over that 1/3, we're in the money with them, we hope. So but that's down the line. We've got a few reports to do on that yet, but we're pretty confident we can pull that one off. But I'll let Peter speak on it. Peter has done a lot of the financial bits and the figures of it, and done most of the negotiating for us for the whole project. We've been working on it for 4 years, and we really need a breakthrough, and it's pretty important we can get that. But Peter, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I was thinking about this when I was coming down. I was thinking, well, you guys have been knocked around a bit with an LTP and budget constraints and line by line things, but I can assure you that the relief of this is that it won't make any difference to your rates, because it will be money in and money out, but that's just by the way. It is important. I think we've got a particularly good trust at the moment. I exclude myself from that, but we have talented people on there, people that have got experience with maintenance, with management and rest homes. Another trustee's got family that are involved in commercial rest homes, and we've got access to information from them. So as Marty said, we've had about 3 years of doing the market research and putting this together. We've had a couple of meetings on site with council, which we thank you for, and we've had a good relationship with them all the way through. So this is the way we want to go about it, of asking you guys to support us financially on a loan basis. I think there's a fair bit of information in your agenda, and probably our best role is for you to, who you obviously would have all read that, is just to ask us some questions about it. I suppose there's a whole lot of different ways of looking at this, but and as it said in one of your reports, that 780,000 isn't a big ticket item on your investment accounts. But I think if we can provide 20 residents with accommodation, sorry, in the big picture, even looking at housing, it looks as though it's a fairly good deal. Be that as it may, we've had to provide you with a cash flow, financial cash flows. I see they're not actually in the agenda, but Paul's had a look at them and done his analysis on them, and subject to the vagrancies of doing things on spreadsheets, it looks pretty positive. Because when we started early on, there's a long history here, and these other guys, apart from me, brought this trust back from the dead and got it to a point where we sort of had 8 or 10, sometimes 12 residents. And we survived only because of community input. And that'll stay, that community input, but we wanted to put it on a sustainable basis where it was actually paying for itself, and any community input was icing on the cake or expanding. And the idea of that was to get up to nearer 20 residents, because the advice we had was there's certain sweet spots when you're running rest homes, and the number of around 20 is one of the sweet spots, and then you go through, it's all about critical mass and economy of scale. So we put this proposition forward and have been working on it, and have come to you guys for that assistance. And what Paul said is dead right. We've talked to a lot of people, but nobody wants to be the first cab off the rank. But if they see some other encouraging support there, we're pretty sure it'll come through. So I don't want to go on and make a lengthy speech, but I just I'd like to hear some questions if you guys have looked through it, and I'm confident we can answer them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Peter. And Barney, right, questions, Councillor Tavendale.
First of all, thank you so much for the work you've put into this, because I know it's been a really massive journey for years, and it's really good to see it at this point of time. A couple of questions I had. First of all, just looking at the repayments of a $750,000 loan at 2.5%. I figured when you start your repayments after 3 years, you're looking at just under 27,000-ish per annum. Is that kind of the right ballpark? I'm not a mathematician, sorry.
Yeah. On our spreadsheet, I think the figure was about 30,000, or circa 30,000 was our interest and principal repayments over that period. There is some. I see the proposition here in the third option is to make it 25 years rather than 30, and we're not dying in the ditch over that. But I think the figure you're talking about is right, about 30,000. And on our spreadsheet, that figure's been put in as an expense, so we've catered for that.
Because looking at your projected figures, you're sort of sitting at needing around 16 residents to make that work. Is that kind of the base figures you're working on, that and more?
Yeah, well, it's all a bit of an unknown. Now, and that the market research we have, there's a wall of oldies coming, but we just don't know quite when that wall's going to be there. But empirically, what's happening at the moment is we're getting more and more demand for people to come in. And the ultimate maximum of beds is 22. And we thought, well, to be fair about that, there's no use sort of saying, look, we're going to have 22 people in there 24/7. So we've pitched it at 18 as sort of an effective thing. And then we've done an option where it drops down to say 15 for a couple of years or something like that. Those years where it goes to 15, we break even or just a bit below. As soon as we build up, we're back in the positive side again. So that's all theoretical stuff, of course, but yeah, we think that 18 is being realistic about it, and we're pretty confident that that demand is going to come. We're not trying to be a Ryman Healthcare or a top of the line. This is very much targeted at the rest home subsidy for local people, and the advantage of that is, of course, there's family and loved ones that are able to visit, and that's the appealing side, rather than having the flash ensuite bathrooms and gymnasiums out the back, which we won't be catering for.
Just to add to that though, about Melanie, we've had 6 on our waiting list for probably the last 9 months, and we're pretty confident we would fill these beds very quickly. Yeah.
That's fantastic news, and yeah, it looks like from based on your figures, I'm presuming depreciation is hidden in here somewhere.
Well, strange you mentioned that. We're just talking to the auditor at the moment. We haven't actually been writing the value of our properties up as the GV goes up. So we're now looking at that because it would actually make our balance sheet a bit stronger if we put the latest GV into it. And I think for the draft accounts, we're going to do that, which would then mean we'd have to start depreciating it. But the depreciation factor is swamped in the fact of the appreciation of the land. So we don't see that as a major. And the depreciation is a non-cash figure. So our cash flow situation is still going to be sufficient to pay any outgoings we've got.
And just a final question, probably more to Mr. Hope, is around the capped at 2.5%. There's talk of interest rates going up, whether or not the local government funding agencies funds may sort of start getting closer to that. I just wonder what the risk you see there for us not allowing any movement on that.
Yeah, that's why in the recommendation, I think council, I don't think could agree to basically a capped rate for this period of time. I think would be better, as I said, basing it off our cost of funds, and it's really council's decision whether we add a margin on top of that. But I think certainly for the foreseeable future, that would mean that they're probably getting a better rate than the 2.5, certainly over the first 3 years that the development is occurring. And I mean, then it's never going to be expensive money, but as I said, I think the idea would be for essentially council to break even on this, not see it as a money-making venture. So if we get a saving, that gets passed on, but it's more sharing the risk than we assume a whole lot of risk. Just so we can give the trust certainty for some time, but not that period of time. So.
Just a question for me before we go to Councillor Hopkins. The trust's been the recipient of a huge amount of public generosity. The community around that area has rallied behind it, brought, helped to bring it back from where it was, the financial hole that it was in. Do you see that still being something that would carry on, even if you've done an upgrade? Will the community still see benefit in supporting the trust and the rest home into the future?
Yeah, well, I would certainly expect it to carry on, Gary. But the other thing is, if we can get the building up to standard, we haven't got that drag on the maintenance, if you like. There's we don't have to keep raising money to fix spouting and all these other things, because if we can upgrade the whole thing, we haven't got that as much drag as we had before. And but the community is still backers. And be there if we need it.
Right.
I think to add to that, sorry to interrupt, but there's no doubt that during this fundraising campaign, we're going to be going back to the community while we're at a step tail auction or something, because it's hard to raise this sort of money out of cake stalls. But it is very significant if you do run a couple of things that that it's skin in the game for the community, and we're very conscious of that. And we get, even however little or much it is, we're going to be going back and getting some local input into it so that the community get that feeling of buy-in, and it is a community asset and they're contributing to it.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Look, I've got a question for Mr. McCone and also one for Paul. On page 67, your cost estimates talk about spending 117,000 just to remove the water tower, replace concrete and strengthen to 33%. Further down, item 4, 192,600 to strengthen the remainder of the building to 67%. So which bit's being strengthened to 33% and why the difference? Is that?
Well, the difference is here, Jim, originally we got an engineer from Timaru to do analyse the earthquake strengthening thing. And that was off his call. And then we got Hadley and Robinson from Dunedin to come in and they are came up with the fact that it does not need strengthening. It's in the stone. And at the moment, the building's at 40%. And along the front of the building, they haven't assessed that yet because we would have to take wallpaper off the wall. And the guy said, well, wait till your thing. But his version is that it could go 60 just the way it is without touching it.
So which bit is to be strengthened to 33% then?
Well, it doesn't need to be now, Jim. No.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, with
Okay,
the
right.
new.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to expand on that, yeah, so these are the figures based on the original
Yes.
assessment. The reality is that this is it isn't an unreinforced masonry building, but it's an Oamaru stone building for the large part. And Hadley Robinson obviously are experts in that, whereas the Timaru firm wasn't. So that's that. What they have indicated there is basically just taking the concrete tiles off and putting colour steel iron on. It would improve the whole structure anyway, because it just lightens the load and makes it much stronger because of that.
No, I get that. And the money that this 1.5 mil will give you the bedrooms for a maximum of 22 people. So that's this new figure you're budgeting for, and you think you could quite possibly theoretically fill that very soon.
Yes.
Good, yeah. So my question then to Paul is, you talked about our cost of borrowing, but I wonder if there's an equity issue also that we need to consider. I'm just asking your view on this. We've lent money to our trust, which set up a trust to put the village, Observatory Village, here in Oamaru. And we charge them a margin over and above our cost of borrowing. I'm wondering if, as a matter of equity, we should mirror that here, not necessarily the same amount, but a similar sort of formula. Or are we going to have different rules for different rest homes?
I think you're more than entitled to have different rules for the different requests. I mean, this is very. The Observatory Village is a very different proposition. Yeah, it is, though it's based on a trust, is very much a corporate model that's got completely different nature. This is a community-based trust trying to meet a specific need in a small community, and I think that it's your choice whether you're making a margin or not. But I think the economics are different, and I suppose I was of the view that if it doesn't cost council anything, it's more like dealing with a very much a charitable institution rather than something that really has more of a corporate focus.
Yeah.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Percival.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this proposal and the fact that I've had a long association with the Waylands right back to the late 60s when I must have gone Tiaka with old Bill. So, but that's not relevant really, I suppose. I don't know how these financial gurus work it all out, but I'm sure it'll be something that can be worked out. But Mr. McCone, you mentioned that to get a third of your what you want to raise would give you the into other borrowing facilities or borrowing investors or funding, I should say. But the proposal here we have is 200,000 odd more than a third. So how does that equate? Or am I getting mixed messages from my reading?
Well, the reason we set the 2.8 was 7,800 was the first three stages. If you've got the perspective there, and that gets us our 5 bedrooms open and running, so that we can create our income, and then we can do all the other jobs like the front door and the side windows and all that have got to be done as well, and the interior decorating. But we can do that. Well, because our aim is once we get those 5 bedrooms open, we can shift 5 residents across into there, and we can upgrade the area they're in, and then we should put another 5 over there and do that. That's why we really need 3 years. Things like. But to get to your question, we need that 750 to get that bit done, and the requirements for the Heritage Building Society, you have to have a third to qualify for it, which is a totally different.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Right.
so we could get 300,000 out of them, just to figure off the top of your head, to add to that 7.8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, thanks for that.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Wallstein, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, team. It was a very good proposal. You put a lot of work into it. So, but I was just thinking in terms of equity, with the recommendation to charge the trust the same cost of interest that council pays to their local government funding authority, LGFA. I think every other entity we lend money to, there is a margin charged, because council does have costs of administration, not to make a profit on the deal as much as like acting like a bank, but just to make some return to cover the cost of administration. Who turned it off? Whether you're based on your 2.5%, the current rate of LGFA would be below 2.5. And I think there is room to build a small margin in there just to provide council with some little margins to cover the cost of administration. So just to raise that for consideration before the recommendations are determined. And then I don't think it needs a comment from you at all. just raising the point that I think that level of interest will still be well within your 2.5%. Certainly, Peter. Please do.
Look, it's a valid argument, and I see where you're coming from. But I suppose we look at it and say, well, this is a community effort. It's community goodwill, and it actually comes under the gamut of council responsibility to a certain extent. I suppose our opinion is that break even would be fine, but if there was any profit in there, it sort of looks as though the council are gaining out of something which we're putting the effort into and making a community. But look, we're not going to die in the ditch over the thing. I see this in option 3. There's provision there to do this finer detailed stuff with the CEO and with Paul. And we're pretty happy with that. We're pretty happy that we can relax. And in the end, we don't want to make a profit. We want to provide a service. And we've said along the lines that if 5 years down the track, we're making some pretty good money, we're pretty happy to pay that money back sooner rather than later. So we're not there we're not a for-profit, we're a not-for-profit, but we're pretty keen to get what's there up in numbers a little bit and have it just sustainable. So I sort of think that the council, if I was on the council, I'd be thinking, well, that's somebody that's helping us do our job. But that's up to you guys. We're not dying in the ditch over it.
The experience of time on council, how to swing it around the other way. Well done, Peter. Councillor Tavendale.
This is probably for Mr. Hope. Just a question based on Councillor Wallstein's comments. Do you have a suggestion around what kind of interest rate you've got annual weighted average of the cost with no margin would cover, the cost around what council has to do admin wise? For a suggestion from our board.
really the size, scale and complexity of the arrangement we're talking about means that once we got it in place, it's pretty much going to run on the rails. It's going to be probably a quarterly interest payment that we can, it's a very simple calculation. It's nowhere near the complexity of, say, a NOICA or an ORV, where there's a very lengthy agreement that takes some administration. There's accountability both ways. This is, I suppose that's what I was looking at. That this is a very straightforward arrangement that, it is for council. It's a relatively small amount, and that we could live with. Even if we put 0.5% on it, it's like $3,000 or something. It's like sorry, it's almost what's the point? Just to sound too generous and not very accountancy like, but it's more about the gesture, and I think the approach and what the trust can take to other providers and saying, look, council sees this as a very much a community endeavour that has a whole lot of benefits outside of financial benefits, and it acknowledges that and supports it. So that was my thinking, just to put a wellbeing hat on.
Sorry, based on that, just shadowing that, I'd like to move the recommendation as it stands.
Yeah, Councillor McRoby.
The words right out of my mouth, as that song says. I would like to second that, and I might make a comment.
Okay, well, I think we'll take that as the mover and seconder. So we have a motion in front of us. If any councillors do have another question, do feel free to ask it, or forever hold your peace. Okay, do anyone want to speak to the motion? Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to see this approach. It's good to see. I mean, it's going to be dependent on you guys running and managing, because it's not that long ago that the place did get into a bit of strife. So we're relying on you to do that management and the numbers to stack up. And it's good for your area. And I mean, Kuria rugby team did a bit of good stuff for your area recently also. So get on the back of that. Let's go for it.
It is really
Mr.
good.
Kingham, that I've been in this trust now, on the trust for 20 years, and I was there the night, but we had no money. We had one resident and we had two caregivers left. And we sat in a circle like this and we didn't know what to do. Nobody had an answer. So we packed up and went home. And this is as far as we got. And I'll guarantee you help us and we'll come up with it. I'll guarantee that.
And I think you coached some famous rugby player once upon a time who had a lot of determination and grit, and I think maybe we see where it came from. Councillor McRoby.
The first person I met in Kurau when I first became a councillor was Barney, and he showed me around the lodge, and it's really nice to see this coming to fruition after, in my case, about 18 or 19 months. And I'd also like to just compliment you and your team for getting it to this point and having such a good paper to present to us. So thank you very much and good luck.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to vote against this, but I would just like to make the point. Peter, I absolutely accept the point you make about this being a community effort. But the borrowing of the money from the LGFA and the granting of the loan is a community risk. And in the end, yes, we are deciding that the risk will be taken, but the risk ultimately will sit with ratepayers, not with us. I mean, we won't individually reach into our pockets if, perish the thought, things were to go wrong. No, I'm not saying they will, but I'm simply making the point that there is, in addition to the community effort, which I absolutely acknowledge and admire, the borrowing of the money does involve a community risk, and a very small margin, in my view, is a not unreasonable recognition of the fact that we are deciding to take that risk on ratepayers' behalf. I doubt that it's going to happen today, and I'm certainly not going to argue for it. But I just want to flag that point. And I mean, in respect of our ratepayers, who will be the ultimate persons who owe, if you like, the money. Yes, maybe you are helping us do our job, but I would have thought first and foremost, the people who should be offering to help you are the Crown and or the District Health Board. Because last time I checked, in theory, health was a central government responsibility. I'm simply making the point, Paul, that you could say that there are other people who it might be helpful to see involved in this process as well as us. But that point, all I'm really saying is that I think Colin was right to just question the question of it, or raise the issue of a possible margin, because I do think there's an element of communal risk associated with any borrowing that a margin might reasonably reflect. Beyond that, I've signaled that I'll happily vote for this.
Sorry, just to clarify, that was my recommendation. It wasn't a request from the trust in terms of no margin. They suggested an interest rate, and I just looked at the proposition and said, actually, given the condition, given everything that we're talking about, this might be a better alternative. So it's not the trust request. They did talk about something else. This is very much an officer recommendation as a way to accommodate things.
Thank you for that, and I accept it. I just think there's a case can be made for the alternative view. That's all.
Councillor Thompson.
I intend to support the trust's case, because I think it's exceedingly important that we offer us elderly people, getting extremely clear, but it's extremely important that we offer the opportunity for people to remain within their own communities and retain some dignity and be part of the community that they've supported through their working years. I know that we argue about the fish hooks, but one of the things that I believe that this council can really bring to the table is the fact that we show that we care about our community. And one of the ways that we can do that is support cases like this.
I'll certainly be supporting this. It's been another one of these projects. We've had a few today that have been taking a long time to get us to this point. But I really take my hat off to the trust, the trustees, the community that's got in behind it, to have turned around the facility to such an extent that actually you're able to look at expanding and rather than closing up. I think that is really important. The well-being of the community is one of the responsibilities we have under the Local Government Act, and I don't know of any better examples than this type of project, which allow, as it's been pointed out already, people to stay in their place and be able to stay in the Kurau area, or even go to the Kurau area because of the wonderful environment that Wayland Lodge actually has for its residents. It is quite unlike any of the other rest homes that we have in the district. It is the only rest home we have in the Waitaki Valley, and that's a really important part of it. And it is obviously very well supported by the community. From a precedent point of view, I mean, there's something that we definitely need to be considering. How does this go against any other rest home? This is different. This is, as Paul pointed out, it's a different model altogether from the retirement village, and it's certainly a different model from privately owned rest homes. It is you're not competing in the area for any other business of getting old folk into there, but it's providing service there. It's providing employment in the area, which is also very important because it's a type of employment that's not readily available necessarily in the Waitaki Valley elsewhere. So I think all of those things mean that we should be supporting this, and I'll certainly be pleased to. And I guess most importantly, to be able to see Wayland Lodge carry on as a rest home. I think, Barney, you might have actually been born there when it was a maternity and home. So if you end up spending some more time there, it's not a bad thing either. So we won't talk about that part of it, but yeah, completing that full circle of life around Wayland Lodge. But it's a special building. heritage wise, I mean, even just speaking to that, it's going to be included in our district plan as something that, as an example that's not example of the way maternity homes used to be, but it's one that hasn't been modified like most have been, or knocked down like many have. That in itself is a good thing. So anyway, I think that's the time for me to have finished speaking. Deputy Mayor, you'll hand over to you for right of reply.
Fantastic. I think that, people have hit the nail on the head. This is a community factor that makes it a bit special, and the work you guys have put in to bring it back from the brink. And you walk around there and you speak to the residents, and their hearts are very much in their home, and that's that part of the district. And being able to keep that available for locals is really, really important. And it's localism at heart. What we're doing here, we're using our ability to access funds to actually support local wellbeing, which is exactly what local government should be doing, is my view. And us looking forward, it's exactly what we should be doing a lot more of. Just wanted to mention that adding a very small margin onto this doesn't negate the risk. It's kind of more of a bank think, and all it does is probably add to your risk and add to your costs, and it doesn't probably bring much into the equation for us. So I'm comfortable with where Mr. Hope has recommended us to start this conversation, and just wish you all the best with this project. Hopefully, you've got our backing, and hopefully that helps getting the rest of it off the ground. Congratulations.
And with that, we'll put it, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Congratulations. Get on and do the rest of the job now, and all the best for the further fundraising. But thank you very much for the good work that you're doing for the Waitaki district. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors. This has been a big day for us. It's a big breakthrough, major, and we hope we're looking forward now to getting on with it. And we're very fortunate we got such a strong trust with a lot of abilities in there, all different fields, and we're very confident we're going to pull it off. So thank you very much for your time and support.
Thank you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Mel, you want to lead a round of applause? Yeah. so thank you very much. And with that, we'll declare the meeting closed. So thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and attendance. It's been appreciated.